Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Treaty LPC, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Self-Aware and Effed Up podcast. I have a very special guest today, and I know you guys probably say that all your guests are special, but this time I really mean it. This is someone that I've known for at least a decade or so at this point, and we have a very unique story of how we came together. We actually met when we were both working at two different agencies in the state of Georgia, and ever since 2009, we have pretty much grown so much over the years and watched each other evolve. So please welcome to the show, Damion Hutchins. He is a author, he's a pastor, he is an educator, Air Force veteran. He pretty much is an all-around awesome human being. And I am so grateful that he's taken time out of his schedule today to speak with us and share a little bit about his story. So welcome to the show, Damion. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. How have you been?
Thank you so much for having me. I have been great, staying positive, trying to stay cool in this heat. And it is such a pleasure to be with you today on your show.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's been forever since we've been able to actually talk offline, but it's great to see your face today and really be able to connect with you and have you share so much about yourself and your journey, your story that you've gone through over the years. So I do want you to introduce yourself. I know I gave you a soft promo intro, but I want you to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about, yourself and what you do, because you do a lot. So I just want you to introduce yourself first.
Right. I do a lot, but it all started because I am an adoptee. When I was 6 months old, my mom abandoned me because she was at a different place in her life at that time. She was 19 years old and I was her third child. And so she left me with a family member and I ended up going into the social services system. And after that happened, I was adopted into a family where the abuse and the neglect continued. Wow. And so I really had to learn how to depend on all the strategies that I knew growing up about how to depend on God, how to depend on myself, how to depend on friends, but most importantly, how to depend on God. It was in 1993, August 14th, 1993.
Oh, you remember right down to the date.
I do. That my adoptive father said to me, I'm taking you to Howard University, right? I said, yes, sir. He says, I'm leaving you there, right? I said, yes, sir. And he took me all the way there. He said, I don't have any money to put you through school, right? I said, yes, I guess so. And he took me to Drew Hall. Okay. Drew Hall, 529 Gresham Place for my Howard alum. Drew Hall dropped me off there and said to me, call me when you can't make it on your own anymore. And that was August 14th, 1993. But because of what I learned about God, because of what I learned about trusting in God, I am here today. And I have not had to call him since 1993. So,
wow.
I know, right?
That's crazy. So he just dropped you off?
Yes, he just dropped me off. Just right there at the front of the school. I had a suitcase, and it was one little suitcase with everything that I had, and it was just a blessing that every time I needed something, there was always someone who was there. And so while, yes, I did endure quite a few different types of abuse growing up, one thing that my adoptive mother did well is that she pointed me to the direction of God. And it was really weird because I'm like, well, how could a God who loves me allow me to go through these things? But I did not understand that was the foundation. That was the calling for me. Okay. A lot of people don't understand that calling is not that you necessarily that you wake up at 3:00 in the morning and, the TV is speaking to you and you get called. Sometimes your call happens because you survived something that nobody would have ever thought you could have survived. Yeah. And, to see. And so you asked me, what was it that kind of led towards that call? Well, for me, be very honest with you, I didn't understand it as a call. Back in 1996, 3 years later, I was a part of a church and I was an armor bearer. Okay. And so for your listeners that don't know what an armor bearer was, basically,
you have to refresh me.
Right. That's the person that carries the pastor's suitcase.
Okay.
The person that just walks around. It's like the pastor's little security person, the person that carries the pastor's nose, runs up to the pulpit and sits the Bible down and everything. And so as an armor bearer, I was always around this pastor. Wherever we went, I was around him. And what I started to notice was that girls like pastors.
Okay.
Girls like preachers and so forth. And so I said, well, I declare, if I really want to.
I know you didn't become a pastor because you like the girls.
Right. Because I said, well, this is how you can get their attention and they're attracted to power. Then I'm going to do that. Now, I didn't realize that God was already paving the way. I thought that I was going into this so I could get some numbers and get some other stuff. But little did I know that God was using me in that area. It wasn't until I got into the Air Force and started to tell my story more, started to get to know people, that God really started to help me to see that everything I had been through was preparing me to be in ministry. And so, and I have learned over the years that the attention and the power is not all it's cracked up to be. But I needed that experience so that God could put me in a position where God wanted me to be. So I've enjoyed being a pastor, a former pastor, a hospital chaplain, hospice chaplain, college chaplain. Girl.
You've been down through there, because I was like, I feel like back in the day talking to you, it's like I think you were driving from like Georgia to South Carolina or something to work. And I was like, oh my God, like I thought I was driving far at that time. You were like driving super far, but you've done a lot and you had a lot of experience. And I know, we talked a little bit about you being a pastor and answering the call. And I mean, of course, let's just address the elephant in the room. Like, you're a pastor, you're a man of the cloth, and you're on a show called Self-Aware and Fucked Up. I mean, I say effed up to be cute and, savvy, but, you're on a show like that. Why would you do something like this? As far as, putting yourself out there, because I'm sure a lot of church folks gonna have some opinions about a pastor being on a show like this.
Well, first thing I will say is that people are going to have opinions about everything. And that's why I do what I do. Because, to be honest, I love the title of your podcast because it describes my life and so many lives of people that I know so well. Right. And so it really, the title Self-Aware and F.I.G.H.T really describes my understanding of myself and appreciation of myself. I often tell people, pastor is what I do. That's not who I am. And part of the problem with many church folks is that we put pastors on this particular pedestal because they think that that's who they are. When in reality, pastoring, serving, helping, listening, encouraging, that's what I do. But at my core, I'm very well aware of the ways in which I am effed up too. And the good thing is that as I understand God and the God in me, there is no surprise that there is not this God that looks like Santa with a long beard that's saying, oh, I can't believe that Damion is this way. No, I am who I am. And so I love this idea that we can come to a place in God and in ourselves where we can be self-aware and effed up and know that we are loved.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you like the title, because I kind of like it myself, because it does describe me. That's kind of how we got there, because a lot of people are self-aware and effed up. And a lot of people really, they struggle with coming to terms with that part of themselves. We're all flawed. We're all individuals who are still trying to figure it out, because we know that when we stop figuring out, that particular point, it's a slow fall to destruction. So I really appreciate you, stepping aside, putting the title aside, and really being able to be authentic with people, because I think that's something that we all need. We talk a lot about church, and there's a lot of people that play church, as I call it. But what role do you actually see spirituality playing in the church?
Right. Well, it's a good question. And I'll put it this way. I've heard someone, I don't know if it was Donald Lawrence, some gospel singer, say that all of us are spiritual beings, right? And I really believe that all of us are spiritual beings. And so I believe that the church is not so much a building as it is a collection of spiritual beings who are all working this thing out called life, and what that looks like, And here's the thing. I think that spirituality in the church shows up the moment all of us show up. It's just that spirituality looks different for each person. And I think that that's okay. For so long, we've been taught that you have to come to church, you have to do things this way, you have to walk this way, you have to dress this way, you have to act this way. And that, I think, takes away the autonomy of people to be their authentic selves and to demonstrate what they believe to be spirituality for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, all of us are spiritual beings with our effed up selves.
We are, we definitely are. Myself at the top of the list. But I think that I know a lot of people do struggle with that idea. When you talk about like being authentic, I love that when I was kind of prepping for the show, you talked about that authentic spirituality being something that was very important to you. Like, what do you think classifies something as authentic spirituality? Because a lot of us play around, but how do we know when it's authentic?
I think it's authentic when we're able to move to our spiritual shower self. Shower self. I use my air quotes for shower self. And here's what I mean by that. When I go out in public, I look good. I mean, you can't tell me that I don't look good. I go out and make sure that my beard is trimmed to the teeth. I make sure that I look good. I make sure that I smell good. I make sure that everything about me is just right. Because after all, I got to go out here and I have to represent, and I have to be looking wonderful. But baby, when I get in the shower, that's when I can be the real me. All the rolls come rolling out. When I'm out in public and I got to smile, even though I really want to cry, when I have to be nice to people, even when I really want to cuss, when I get into the shower, I can cuss, I can fuss, I can be my authentic self. And I don't have to make any apologies. I don't have to explain myself to anybody. And so for me, authentic spirituality is when we're able to take that shower self out into the world. And so now there are days when I go out and my beard is not going to be all the way perfectly trimmed. Guess what? That hasn't stopped people from saying hello. That hasn't stopped people from wondering what's different about this person. There'll be some times when, I might look like I'm a little bit easier to see or fat, in other words, but that's okay now, And so in the same way, my spirituality is the same way, people will often try to correct me, church folks especially, will try to correct me because I may say, a curse word here or there. And I remind folks that there is nothing that I'm going to say or do that's going to shock the divine. Right. Especially not the divine that's in me. And, if I have already said it, then I've already thought it. And so if I've already thought it, I might as well communicate what it is I'm trying to say so that I can be true to myself. And that's where I try to get folks really is to a place where they understand that authentic spirituality is when you're okay with being who you be. As one of my, I better give credit, as one of my seminary professors, former seminary professors would have said, being who you be is different than the person and who you are.
Yeah.
Who you be is that shower self.
Yeah.
Who you are is how you present to everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to question myself over here. Like, do I let my shower self go outside? I have to ponder on that a little bit more, but I do. I feel like a lot of us definitely over the years have learned to always be on and not be off. Like right now, I can't tell if I'm on or off because which version of me you get depends on who I'm talking to at the time. But I think that a lot of us, we feel like we have to fit this role or this bubble when it comes to spirituality. And so when you talk about tapping into that authentic self, how would you guide someone, that maybe they're not necessarily play in church. They may not necessarily fully understand their authentic spirituality and what that even looks like for them. How would you guide some of them and help them move from that place of what I call playing church to a place of that more authentic self?
Mm-hmm. Dr. Naeem Akbar wrote a book called Know Thyself. And I think it's based off of an African proverb. And I really believe that in order to guide a person toward a relationship with God, it starts with guiding them towards developing a relationship with themselves, getting them to a place where they stop, where we stop lying to ourselves. And I know that as a counselor, you can appreciate having clients that come to you and, they're laying out all of these different problems. And in the back of your mind, you're saying, now, good and well, you are the reason behind this.
Of course not.
But
not
many times, no. We would never. But our church folks like to do that. And so I really try to get people to recognize that you cannot develop a strong, intimate relationship with God until you develop that intimate relationship with yourself.
Wow.
Be okay with saying, this is how I feel. This is what I'm going through. This is what's really happening with me. And that's why I can appreciate, and I promise you, I am not going to preach on your show, but that's why I can appreciate people like David in the Bible who really struggled with, I like women. I like women. I'm gonna be the king. Yes, but I want all of these here. And he struggled and failed so many times, but he was okay with saying, yes, I struggled. Yes, I failed, but I know that God still loves me. And I think that was a big part of why David was known as a man after God's own heart, because he was able to be clear with himself. David was one that was quick to say, had it not been for God on my side, I would have slipped a long time ago. And I have slipped many times,
We talking personal, we talking about David. I'm just asking for a friend.
Right. Both. Both. And so I know that the reason why I slipped so many times, because I'm so busy trying to fake. Instead of being honest about, this is what I want in the beginning. This is what I want up front. And so it's very difficult to develop this intimate relationship with God if you don't have an intimate relationship with yourself. And so as a result, we end up putting God into this sort of category where God has to be the fix-up person rather than the person that is one and the same with us. Now, I just messed up about 95% of your strong church-going listeners by saying the God that is with us, the God that is in us, the God that is us.
Yeah. Well, we could definitely dive a little deeper into that, because I don't think a lot of people are ready for that conversation, because we don't necessarily want to see ourselves as that within us. We look at that as blasphemy, or, we look at that as us having false idols or prophets and things of that nature. So when you talk about that, you say it messes them up. Why do you think that messes them up so much?
Because it feels blasphemous to so many people to trust God at God's word.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that God already put the spark of the divine in each and every one of us when God created us. When God, to be created in one's image.
Okay, so I know that you kind of talked a little bit just then about this whole idea of us not having a situation where people are playing church. So how do people move from playing church to getting to a place where they can have this authentic spirituality that you spoke about?
Well, a lot of what I think is playing church is learned behavior. And what I mean by that is that, for example, I grew up in a congregation where you did not come to church, you didn't wear a certain thing, you sat down, you sang songs a particular way, you got up, you left. I started to become introduced to denominations and churches where the only way that you knew if you had church, air quotes again, had church, is if the pastor gave a good performance, right? And so we knew that the pastor gave a good performance if we left out just completely worn out from our aerobics exercise for an hour and a half running around. Yes. And I say hollering and spitting on folks,
You used to say yelling at Jesus. So I used to die a little bit every time you said that.
Right. Yelling at Jesus and running around hollering and screaming and spitting at folks, and but much of that is because this is what we've seen other people do. And many times we have become conditioned to believe that that's the way that we get God's attention.
Yeah.
In my later years, I've gotten too fat to be doing all that running and hollering and spitting on folks and stuff. And I have learned I can keep a whole lot of breath by just waving my hand or by just saying, God, I thank you that I woke up today, or just having this time of just meditative thought. And it wasn't really until I got into pastoring. It wasn't until I was there in the congregation and I recognized that I had some people who were shouters. I had some people who would just sit and cry the whole service. I had some people who would just sit in this very reflective stance. But all of them, as you get to know them, all of them were living out their spirituality in their own way. No one felt like they had to play church, because they knew that they were free to come into the congregation and to just be who they be for that time.
Right. Absolutely.
You've been dealing with hell all week long. You might not feel like coming in and running. You may not be at the place where you feel like God is going to work everything out when the doctor has just told you that you've got less than 4 weeks to live.
Wow.
That may be a time when you want to come in and just really sit, and you recognize you can do all the shouting in the world. That's not going to change the fact that in 4 weeks, your time is up.
Right.
And so I try to help people to move from a place of playing by helping them to see, once again, that divinity that's within is going to drive every action that they make, every move that they make.
Yeah.
And that that divinity within is directly connected to the spirituality. Yeah. It informs the spirituality that we demonstrate.
Why do you think people are so opposed to recognizing that divinity within?
That's a good question. I think that one reason that is because it's a relatively new thought. It's a relatively postmodern thought.
Okay.
And I don't know that it's really a new thought as much as we're just at a place now where we can accept it as possible.
Absolutely.
Another thing is that life has been so difficult for so many people. And so here's the thing. A lot of people look at God as a father, right? And in a society, a culture where father means a whole lot of things to a lot of people, that's not always a good thing. Absolutely. And so if you've got this negative impression of what it means to have a father, be a father, know a father, then that's how you're going to look at God in many cases, not all, but not exclusively, but in many cases. And so I think that people are really afraid of acknowledging the divinity within because they don't want to acknowledge the ways that, if this is what God is really like my father, then I'm not sure I don't know that I really want somebody that's going to abuse me, abandon me, talk down to me, treat me like I'm not anything. I'm not sure that that's what I want to do.
Right.
The other piece to that is people don't want to acknowledge that because you don't have to be as accountable. Right? When you recognize that you've got the divinity within, then you can't play the victim. Hello, somebody.
Okay.
You
Well,
know?
they definitely not gonna like that. I can tell you. But this show is not about what you like. It's about being real and being authentic and getting to the core of what things in your life you need to fix in order to be able to get to a better, more evolved, self-aware and effed up version of yourself. Because we all gonna be at some point, there are gonna be parts of us that are effed up, and that's just life, and that's just a part of who we are. And this show, it is partially to reach, maybe people who some Christians out there who maybe don't fully understand the role of spirituality and the differences between playing church and having an authentic relationship. But I'm curious about how we reach people that are outside of the four walls, that are not necessarily getting their spirituality from church. How do we reach that population of people?
Mm-hmm. I cuss a lot. Right. Yes, I do. But, I really honestly believe, I've always heard that if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're not doing yourself or anybody else any favors. Right. Yeah. And I keep a lot of people who I am friends with, a lot of people who are not in the church, a lot of people who are not religious. And guess who also did that? This person that a lot of your listeners may have heard of. His name is Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the magical baby Jesus. I'm talking about the Jesus who actually had a whole bunch of friends, some who were hood, some who were liars and cheaters, some who were all that kind of stuff. And that's all the folk he hung out with.
Right. Yeah. He was out there in the streets.
I used that. Right. He was for real.
He was in the streets.
And people, have this idea that because it's not explicitly stated in the text, then it must not have happened.
Yeah.
But anybody whose first miracle is to turn water into wine, you already know good and well. They had some homies.
Okay.
They were out there. Right. Yeah. And so I think, I'd love to come back on your show and actually do a deep dive into this idea of, is God effed up? It would mess up a whole lot of folks.
Okay, I'm gonna have to pray about that one, because
here's the thing. As you look throughout Scripture, this image of God as this happy person who always fixed everything, who always made everything better, that's not a true image of God of the Bible,
right?
New or Old Testament. Yes, there were places in there where healing took place. Yes, there were places where miracles took place, but there were also places where people had to die. There were also places where people, at the command of God, had to be killed because of decisions that they made, or simply because God decided one day, you know what? I'm sick of all y'all. Let me just start over and just kill everybody. Oh, we don't want to talk about that, because the God I serve is wonderful. The God I serve is great and would never cause anything and allow anything to happen bad in my life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Not so sure.
Yeah. Got me over here examining my life and the things that have happened. And I do believe in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for my good, but it's a lot of bad shit that happened in between it working together for the good. And that's what people don't want to talk about. So I definitely appreciate the authenticity that you bring. You said you cuss a lot, because I feel like Gen Z and the millennial generation, even though I'm technically a millennial, but don't tell anybody. But I feel like that population can be harder to reach. And I know you said cursing, but, is there any other finesse to how people in that generation are reached? Or even, do you even see differences in how they connect with spirituality versus how maybe some of our boomers or older adults kind of connect with the word and with church?
Right. See, so I like to meet people exactly where they are. And one of the things that COVID has taught us is that you don't have to be in a building.
Yeah.
And, I love part of where ministry and education collide. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that I have so many kids who are teaching me about technology, about social media, about different ways. And I remember pastoring my last church where a lot of the teenagers and the young adults would say, you know what, I love watching you. I'm not going up in that building, but I will be online every Sunday, and I'm going to watch you while I'm sipping on my whatever I'm sipping on from the night before, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to listen to you. But I'm right, and the juice, and but I'm not going in that building, and being able to meet them at that place, not discouraging or minimizing who they are as human beings. Mm-hmm. And more than that, loving them for wherever they are in their journey, loving them for wherever they are in their place, in their journey. Yeah. I'll never forget my last church. There was a young lady that I had. She was a lesbian. Mm-hmm. She was out. She was very open about it, but she would not come into the church. She grew up in that church, but every time she came to the church, the people would just treat her so badly. Millennial. And they would treat her so badly. This is someone she grew up, person they grew up with, and I'll never forget when she came to me and she says, the only reason I started coming back is because I knew that you were a pastor who just accepted me just as I am. Yeah. And I think that a part of reaching any generation is to be transparent enough to show them that I have my flaws. I have my weaknesses. And my wife will tell you, I got enough of them, but the difference is that I'm clear about where I am. Yeah. I am an open book. If I did it, I did it. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody because they may not be at that place yet. Yeah. But I'm too old now to be trying to hide behind who I be, what I like, who I like. And that's been a draw for millennials and Gen Z, that here's a person who can say, yes, this is what I like. He's not going to run away just because we called him over for a family reunion. And everybody's there drinking, smoking. And smoking, and and I ain't talking about Newports. They smoking the good stuff, right? Yeah. And I pull up, and everybody doesn't have to go run for cover. Right. There was that time the pastor come over to your house. You got to put out the bowl of mints and put out the whole remember the big, come over here, the big Bible no grandma had out. Right. The big Bible and all. When they recognize that they had a person who's just going to meet them where they are. And Lord knows I've had my share of going over to be with folks and minister with folks. And I left going, I feel pretty good. What's going on here, Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's awesome that you're able to kind of meet people where they are. I always say we do that a lot in therapy and, having to kind of meet that person. I'm not going to match your energy in that way. Like, I'm not, if you're depressed, I'm not coming down to be depressed with you, but I definitely can at least put my affect where your affect is so that we can connect. So I could definitely understand that. But I think that it's so important, especially with where we are, because we got a lot of shit going on in the world, like just in general. You got all these shootings going on. You have, obviously we acting like the pandemic is over and it's clearly not. And there's just so much. And I haven't been to a church for anything other than a funeral or a wedding in probably I'm coming up on 6 or 7 years at this particular point, and maybe actually a little bit longer, because I definitely, that's not something that I want to be a part of it as far as organized religion. But I do think it's important for everyone to have a spiritual foundation. I always tell people I'm very spiritually connected, to my higher power, but the church, y'all can have that, all to yourselves. But I'm grateful that there are people out there like you who is able to create that safe space for people to connect and build a relationship with a higher power. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is really important, and I don't know where you are on this. I think I kind of know, but the church and mental health, like that has been like something that has bothered me for a very long time. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how the church handles mental health issues and illnesses within the parish or whatever you call
they
people,
suck.
the congregation.
They suck.
Okay.
Because for so long, there's been this idea that long as I got Jesus, I don't need nobody else.
Yes.
And that is the biggest crock of bull that I have ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have learned in my life that I better have Jesus, a therapist, and sometimes a psychiatrist too.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to God I have all three of them. Okay. Because they're going to be sometimes, yes, Jesus is on the main line. You can tell Jesus what you want, but you're going to need to get some help to get to that place.
Absolutely.
Right? You can call Jesus all you want. And that's not to say, that is not, I want to be real clear, that is not to minimize how anyone thinks about Jesus and the power of God to heal, or the power of God and miracles. I don't want to take away from anyone's personal belief, but I have seen way too many well-meaning Christian, religious, spiritual people drop dead because they did not want to get the help that they needed, because they were conditioned to believe that something must be wrong with me if I pray and nothing changes.
Absolutely.
And I think that the church has not done well in that area. And here's the thing. If you think that Jesus didn't have any kind of therapy or anybody to talk to, once again, it goes back to, just because it's not in the text doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Right.
And when you are dealing with folks and all they mess all the time, there were plenty of times Jesus had to get away.
Yeah.
Get away. And I fully believe that, part of why Jesus would go and spend time with people, it wasn't because, Jesus was homeless and didn't have a place to live. That was a grown man. Jesus could, with a trade. So I believe that part of that was Jesus's self-care, if you will. Jesus's way of taking care of his own mental health was being around other people. The church has got to do a better job of collaborating with counselors, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, people that can help folks to work through stuff.
Right.
Because, life is hard enough.
Exactly.
Religious life is an additional layer.
It is.
Right. Working through all your spirituality and all your mess, that's a completely different layer.
Right.
And all of these things have to work together. Even as a pastor, I have a pastor. I have a therapist. I have a psychiatrist. I have a psychologist. And they all, and the irony is they often all have very similar tools and very similar things that they're telling me. But they work together.
They're telling you out there, we need help. But,
right.
Yeah. But no, I definitely get it. I tell people probably every episode, I'm a therapist that will forever be in therapist, but I got a psychiatrist too. I don't have a psychologist, because I just don't have one. But I do have a therapist and a psychiatrist that I see, because if you listen to people, and I can imagine, like you said, with Jesus being out there and having all of this stuff going around him, I'm sure he needed somebody to talk to, or, I'm not going to go any further into that.
Well, and here's the other thing, Tree, suicide is very real.
Yeah.
And I've seen it too many times. Heart attacks, very real, from stress, strokes, from stress, all because folks didn't want to go get help.
Yeah.
It wasn't because nothing was wrong with their heart. It was because mama died 20 years ago and you still ain't been able to work through your grief.
Yeah.
And so now your body has eventually just shut down.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that that's why self-care is so important within all spaces, not just the church, but just everywhere. What are your thoughts on self-care, and why do you feel like it's so important for us?
Okay. Once again, another good question. Self-care is something I really had to learn how to do because I always had been taught that Christians should be so selfless that they should take care of everybody else before they take care of themselves. They should always look at helping somebody else, helping everybody. Guess what? You've been and killed yourself doing that.
Right.
This is why when you get on that airplane, they tell you before you go start helping other folks, if that little thing pop up from out the ceiling, put your mask on first before you go and try helping other folks. Right? In this COVID time, Lord knows we've had this stuff with masks. Baby, you better put your mask on before you go around trying to help somebody else that's coughing and breathing on you.
They coughing, I'm running. Okay, I'm not going anywhere near. Period.
Right. And if you do, make sure you have on and self-care is the same way, And so I think that it's important that we really learn how to unplug. Scriptural. Jesus knew how to get away from folks.
Absolutely.
Jesus knew how to say, guess what? Y'all going over there. I'll see y'all when I get there. All right?
Yeah.
I'll catch you later. I need some time to myself. We need to have time to ourselves.
Yeah.
Another tip for self-care that I would say is learn how to say no.
Yeah.
Not only unplug, but learn how to say no.
Yeah.
This same seminary professor, Dr. Willie Goodman from the Interdenominational Theological Center, he used to always tell us, he said, if you don't learn how to say no, then folks are always going to come to you, and eventually you're going to drop dead. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to take you. We're going to roll you down into the church. We're going to say some lies over you. We're going to take you out to the cemetery and plant you in the ground. We're going to go back to the church and say, ooh, eat some chicken and macaroni and cheese and green beans and cornbread and find somebody else to go and stress out.
Yeah.
Don't you let folks stress you out. Learn how to say no. It's okay to turn down stuff. Even Jesus said, did not heal every single person. Even God did not answer every request.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to say no for your own self-care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, and we talked about this, I am famous for deactivating social media.
Yes, you look on Facebook and anyway, you gone quick. And I'm like, what's going on? Where's Damien?
Yeah. Because I recognize that for me, sometimes I can get so involved in what people think, that it messes with my own spirit. And I cannot allow my own peace to be negatively impacted by what I see in the scroll.
Absolutely.
All of that those are things that can go into your spirit.
Right.
I believe, and so when I feel like it's getting to be too much, I need to take a break for myself. I need to learn how to sit back, say no.
Yeah. I think that's a really important tool. I'm not great with deactivating for extended periods of time. I had another guest on the show and she talked about her like deactivating for like months or whatever. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do it. One, because I use Facebook a lot for business stuff. And it's like, if I deactivate my personal account, then it deactivates everything. And it's like, I still got stuff I need to do. But I feel jealous and envious of the fact that some people just can just take it off and not deal with it for periods of time. So I do think that it's something a lot of people need to do more often, because we get caught up in other people, their opinions and what's going on with them. And it really just kind of creates a cloudy space for ourselves in terms of our mental wellness. And you got all of this going on in your ear and your eyes. You got all of this in your spirit. It's hard to kind of focus in on what's important. And the main thing is taking care of yourself and your mental wellness. So
why am I not good enough? Look at what they got.
Right.
Why am I not,
And you don't know they out there, I'm not gonna say that. They out there tricking
Yes,
off and stuff and doing all kind of
ma'am.
crazy stuff, and you over here want to be like them. And it's like, okay, well, if that's what you want, but there are other ways to get there. And I'm not saying everybody that's in that prosperity space is tricking off, but a lot of them are. So that's that. But Damion, I so appreciate you talking with me, talking with the audience about just all the stuff that you shared about self-care, spiritual authenticity, and just really being able to get in tune with the God within yourself. I think that's so important. I know a lot of people probably not ready to hear it, but they're going to hear it anyway. So I really appreciate that. I want you to share with the audience, how can they connect with you? I know you have a book that you've written, and I know that you do a lot within the community as far as church, you're an educator. How can people connect with you in order to purchase your book or just be able to get more information from you?
Yeah, they can always reach me by way of social media. When I'm there, yes.
When you're there.
On Facebook at Damion Hutchins, on Instagram, the 357. The name of my book is F.I.G.H.T, From Not Enough to Good Enough. I thought I had one on my bookshelf, but it's called F.I.G.H.T, F-I-G-H-T, From Not Enough to Good Enough. And a lot of what we talked about today, I cover in the book. F.I.G.H.T is an acronym that stands for faith, imagination, goals, help, and time. And so I walk through how all of that impacts one's spirituality in a way that helps them to become authentic. And it's available by Amazon or wherever you get your books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books, it's available there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
And of course, they can always reach out at DamienHutchins@yahoo.com.
Okay. We're going to get the email out too. Good to you. So I really truly appreciate you. It means a lot to me that you took time out of your schedule. I was going to see if I could reach for one of your books, the book over there, but my bookcase is too far away from me as well. So I'll not be able to do that, but I will definitely make sure I put the link to the book in the description of this episode. Make sure you guys follow Damion on Instagram, reach out to him if you have questions or if you want to connect with him in some way and purchase his book. Also, make sure you guys follow me, Treaty LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Treaty LPC. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this week's episode. And make sure you tune in for next week's episode as well, where I'll be speaking with sex therapist Pontress S. Bailey. You guys don't want to miss that episode as well. Until next time, be safe, be well, and take care of your mental health.